Errol Spence versus Terence Crawford. 12 rounds for all of the belts. Someone is going to be undisputed after this fight. Someone is going to have their undefeated record snapped. But who? Next Saturday, we will have those answers. If this fight lives up to the hype, it'll be one of the greatest boxing matches ever. It has that type of potential. This is the fight we as spectators have been asking about for years. We've been wanting to see it for years. A lot of back and forth has been happening for years, but here it is. First and foremost, I'm a supporter of both guys, right? And regardless of whom you want to win, the focus should be on the fact that we actually get to see the fight and they made it happen and we're getting it. Right. And this will probably be a fight where there is a rematch clause and we'll probably see a second fight. And depending on how the second fight goes, there's a possibility we could see a third fight. Right. But let's do this video a little bit different. Right. Usually I give every man their just due and then we kind of go from there. Right. But this video, man, I want to intertwine the two of both men all in one. Let's just have a conversation. Take your biases aside, right? And let's just talk about it. Let's just have a conversation. Let's get into it. Let's start with Errol, the Truth Spence. 28 wins, no losses, 22 wins by way of knockout. Terence Bud Crawford, 39 wins, 0 losses, and 30 wins by way of knockout. Not to mention, since Crawford moved up to the welterweight division, he stopped all of his opponents. He's on a 10-fight win streak. Spence has fought some great competition. Talking about Chris Algieri, Kell Brook, we're talking about Lamont Peterson, we're talking about Mikey Garcia, Shawn Porter, Danny Garcia, and most recently, Yordenis Ugas, and a few others, but those are the main people that most people know and are familiar with. Crawford has fought some great competition as well, too. We're talking about Ricky Burns, Eureka's Gamboa, Victor Postol, Julius Indongo, Jeff Horn, Amir Khan, Ejid Kavalaskis, right? Kell Brook, Shawn Porter, and most recently, David Avanesian. Both men are mentally tough. You hear Bud talk about his life and you hear what he had to overcome, right? He got shot in the head and pushed through that. You know what I'm saying? Then on the other side, you talk about Spence and all the accidents that he's had. And to be able to overcome those levels of adversities in their lives and still be able to get back into the ring and not miss a beat, yo, that's crazy. Yo, that's crazy. When you truly sit and you think about the mental fortitude, right? Spence came back after his incident and within 14 months fought Danny Garcia and got the win. Spence was supposed to fight Manny Pacquiao in 2021, but an eye injury set that back, dropped out of it, right? And came back and fought Yordenis Ugas for his belt. There's always questions about a fighter coming back after a long layoff, right? Ring rust. You're not sure how long it's going to take for them to get back into groove of things, right? But a guy like Spence doesn't seem to have any of those problems, right? He's just coming back into fights, jumping in the fire, no tune-ups, and he gets right back to doing his thing like he hasn't missed a beat. You cross over to Terence Bud Crawford, right? And this is a guy who has a switch, man, right? There are times I've watched his fights in his corner might say, yo, Bud, like you're losing, right? Like you're losing. You're down on the cards. And then the next moment he comes out, flips that switch, and either drops his opponent shortly after or he punishes them the next round and steals back the momentum. The man is different like that, right? He doesn't play around, right? When he's got that extra target, that extra motivation, so to speak, and that extra purpose inside of the ring, man, he can lock and dial in his focus in a second. Not a lot of people can do that. Both men have different styles, right? When you think of straight athleticism, man, it's hard not to say that Bud has got that edge. When it comes to saying who's more fundamentally, technically sound, it's hard not to say that that part goes to Spence. But that doesn't mean that Spence isn't athletic, and it doesn't mean that Bud doesn't have great fundamentals, because they both do. It's just that one is more apparent than the other in their respective strengths. Let's go back a bit to their fight with Kell Brook because they fought similar opponents, right? But we're going to start with Kell Brook. Spence, when he fought Kell Brook back in 2017, that was a title fight for the IBF welterweight title. Kell Brook was coming off a loss in his recent fight where he moved up to fight Triple G, right? And try to take Triple G's belt. But he got stopped in the 5th round, and you got to admire that heart, right? You got to admire that will to be great. You know, Triple G at that time was, man, he was on his A game. He was on his A game, tough to beat. You know how big of a puncher Triple G is. This was the fight where Spence has said in interviews, man, Kell Brook might have been my toughest fight, right? That was Spence's first fight away from America. So the pressure was on. We know Kell Brook is strong. We know he's skillful, right? We know he has good technique. You know he's got good power, got a stiff, strong jab that be popping Cass's head back when he pushes that thing through, right? And the more experienced fighter at the time, not to mention the champion, not to mention he was fighting at home as well too, right? We got to keep all that in mind. There were times where you could see the strength of Kell Brook imposing his physicality on Errol Spence. But Spence didn't back down, man. He stood in the pocket, kept the pressure, and stayed disciplined, right? He had to find different ways for his punch to land. He had to loop some shots in. He had to double the jab and hit him with a left hook or a right hook, right? He had to change levels. He had to throw feints. He had to find different ways to land his shots, but being responsible enough to get out of the way. He did take some clean shots in that fight, man. Errol Spence got a chin. He got a chin. And Kell Brook is no light puncher, right? But the thing with Spence that makes him so good is his consistency throughout the fight, his efficiency throughout the fight. He's always throwing, always applying calculated pressure when he's in close, man. And like, that's where he's feeling his comfort, right? He's comfortable on that inside fight. Kell Brook started to slow down as the fight went on. And that's when Errol Spence was landing some of those shots that he was missing earlier, because he kept the consistency and he got the momentum, and momentum really shift in that 8th round. He was able to drop Kell Brook in the 10th and get the stoppage win in the 11th. Spence throws a lot, but he's accurate and relentless in what he throws and how he throws and the variety of shots that he throws, man. It was a great performance. He didn't start the best, but he finishes greatly, right? Once he's in his rhythm, man, once he's in his flow, once he's got the cadence and once he's feeling good, right? Once he's in his flow and his rhythm, man, he's hard to break. But that was a fight that he had to dig deep in certain parts of the fight and earn that victory. Now, when Crawford fought Kell Brook, it was a different fight, right? Kell Brook was much more patient. He was thinking a whole lot, a little too much, right? And Bud had him right where he wanted him to be. If you let Bud slow the fight down, he's going to put you in positions that he wants you to be in. Bud's a very smart fighter in the ring because of his athleticism. He can get on the inside in a second, right? And he can do that from the orthodox stance or the southpaw stance. We know he's a switch hitter, but how easy he can get in and out of stances is a massive strength of his. Not to mention, he can punch with either hand out of either stances. Like, it's really incredible what he can do inside that ring, man. Kell Brook, that fight, was trying to make Crawford commit so he could counter Crawford, but he wasn't using his jab, man. Kell Brook always has been known to have a good jab, but he wasn't using it in that fight. He wasn't using his physicality to his advantage, right? When he was jabbing, it was hitting Bud and pushing Bud off and just keeping him honest. But when he was trying to counter, right, he allowed Bud to break that gap a lot quicker. Bud can make mistakes and get away with it because of how athletic he is and because of the switching in the stances and because of how aware he is inside the ring, man. Kell Brook can't do that, though. I never felt like Kell Brook fought with strength in that fight, right? And Bud took advantage of that. In the 4th round, you could see the subtle changes Bud was making, the positioning of his lead foot and his back foot. And Kell Brook got caught with the right hand. And Bud was able to capitalize it because in the movement before, he had already positioned himself for that left hand to come through, and he was able to close out the show. It was so quick. Kell Brook didn't even see it coming, right? Bud is dangerous, now, man. And Spence's no doubt fight about with that. Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter always fought the best, man, and always brought his best. And you got to respect that about Showtime Shawn Porter. You know the type of pressure that Porter is going to bring. You know what time it is in a Shawn Porter fight, right? Spence is always going to apply the pressure. That's something that he's known to do. But I don't think in that fight he was ready for the type of pressure that was coming his way from Shawn Porter. Porter was on a mission that night, man. I think he had the right game plan, right? Pressure the pressuring fighter and make him uncomfortable, tire him out a little bit, right? That was a lot of action in that fight, a risky move from Porter. But for me, that was the fight to see how Spence was going to handle that type of pressure. It's easy to be a pressure fighter, but when the tides are turned, how do you handle the pressure, right? I thought his footwork in that fight was solid. To be able to duck and weave from shots or pivot sideways and someone is trying to take your head off is an easy thing to do. He got clipped a bunch of times that fight, but he also evaded a lot of those shots as well. I don't think Spence gets enough credit for his defense. Yeah, he does get hit, but he's a lot more elusive than he's given credit for, right? Spence knew he couldn't just go into that fight against Porter and just be reckless. He had to make everything calculated because he knew Porter was going to throw a lot of shots and a whole bunch of different shots. The thing with Porter being so aggressive, man, is at times that his aggression can actually be something that hurts him because it can come off as a little bit wild. And it cost him in that 11th round when he fought Spence because Spence dropped him and scored a knockdown. Spence is consistent with his work rate and his technique, whereas Shawn's aggression sometimes makes him overcommit and puts him in danger. That was an exciting fight from both men, and Spence came away with the win. Now, when Bud fought Porter, it was again a different fight. Porter slowed the fight down. He was picking his spots earlier in that fight. He was trying to box a little bit more than just bringing that high energy. Right? Because Crawford's fast, man. He's explosive. So you can't fight him the same that you fought in Errol Spence, because I was expecting that relentless pressure from Shawn Porter. Not to say that he wasn't having success, because he was, right? He caught Crawford with some clean shots to the chin. But at the same time, you got to see the elusiveness and the footwork and the speed of Crawford in that fight. Bud was very accurate that night. Right? And I got the sense that he wanted to fight on the inside, wanted to fight in the pocket that night. But Shawn Porter didn't fully fight his fight. Didn't look like he really wanted to engage in that close range type of fight too much, right? And I think that's where he lost the fight. Bud was very sharp, moving very well that night, very accurate. Porter fought very well that night too. And even though Shawn Porter was up on the cards in the early rounds, there were some sequences where you caught yourself probably saying, man, yo, if Bud connected on that, whoo, it would have been over with, right? But for me, from a footwork standpoint and accuracy, man, that might have been the best Bud Crawford that I've seen. He looked great. Porter didn't look as conditioned as he normally looked to me as the fight went on. He started to make more mistakes, and you can only make so much mistakes against a guy like Terence Crawford before he really starts to capitalize on it. Right after the knockdown in the ninth, it was over with. And a lot of people were saying, man, why did Shawn Porter's dad throw in the towel? Man, he was going to get, if he didn't throw in the towel, Shawn Porter's frustration was going to get him stopped. Right? When you get knocked down and you're punching the mat out of frustration and anger, you are now emotionally attached to the fight. You can't go into the fight emotional. And if he didn't stop the fight, Crawford would have definitely found a way how to really stop that fight, because he is one of the best finishers in the sport today. Spence's last fight, he fought Yordenis Ugas. Except for the body shot that made him spit out the mouth guard, I thought he fought a very good fight. Right? In the All Access, he talked about that moment. He said he was afraid his teeth was coming out and it had fallen out. Right? So he took his eye off of the fight, didn't care about the fight. He just wanted to make sure that he wasn't being looked at on TV and his tooth was gone. Is a whole different thing, man. And you can't be doing that, Spence. You know what I'm saying? You can't be doing that, man, because you were able to get away with that against Ugas, but you're not going to be able to get away with that against Terence Crawford. But the way how Spence closed out that show, I mean, Ugas uses his length and his reach to his advantage, but the pressure of Spence, man, it just does what it does best, and it breaks you down round to round. The power looks strong. The accuracy was right, right? The explosiveness was right. It was too much to overcome for Yordenis Ugas, man. He fought a great fight, but it just goes to show the type of guy that Errol Spence is, man. He fights to take you out. He's chopping down heavy shots every time that he's inside the ring. Crawford in his last fight fought David Avanesian in a stay busy fight, but at the same time, there was a fight where Bud got hit with some shots that he usually doesn't get hit with, some shots that he usually doesn't let go through. Avanesian fought a good fight against Bud and has some success, but against Bud, man, you can't just have a good game plan, man. You got to have a great game plan and then some, right? You have to not let him control the pace. He's too good, too skilled, too sharp, too smart, man. Crawford looked like in that fight, looked like he was kind of taking it easy. Looked like he was trying to work through some things. And then once he said, you know what, I've had enough of this, man. I'm going to close out the show. It looked like that switch was switched on again. And he closed out the show in a beautifully set up time sequence in the 7th round to close out that show. Look, we can go back and forth, so many different fights, so many different angles, but these are the two that came to mind when it comes to a comparison standpoint. I'm sure many of you have different ones as well, too. So who wins? I've said it before. I've said it again. Many of you may say the same thing and see the same things, man. This is a true 50-50 fight, and a fight where I could see either man winning this fight in either way. I could see a stoppage or I could see a distance play. When I think about it, sometimes I lean Spence, sometimes I lean Bud Crawford. I know a lot of people for this fight too. It's not even so much about either man. It's about the odds for all my bettors out there. Right, but from a boxing standpoint, man, this fight can definitely go either way. Now, if I had to pick today, I think I lean 51% for Errol Spence, 49% for Bud Crawford, and I say that based on the fights that we've seen so far. I know that Spence is going to be consistent with his volume and technique from rounds 1 to round 12. He is going to look generally the same every single round. Bud always looks great. Always looks great, but sometimes you have to remind him that he's losing for him to flip that switch and turn it on. And for that extra 2% pulls me to 51% for Errol Spence. But it's a close fight. And as spectators, as supporters of the sport, man, it's not even about picking the either man. It's about appreciating the greatness that we are about to see. Right? I think this fight does go the distance. I think either man is going to win by a mixed decision or a split decision. But right now, I got to do another show on Wednesday, and I may lean towards Terence Bud Crawford. But as of right now, I'm leaning towards Errol Spence by that extra 2% to win this one on points. But again, this is a fight that could go either way, and I'm just looking forward to seeing this fight. What are your thoughts on this fight? Who do you have winning this one? Let me know in the comment section below. If you would like to support the channel, there's a couple ways you can do so. You can like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you would like to support by way of donation, you can find options in the description below. Also, my Cash App handle will be on screen as well. Any amount goes towards the growth of this channel and will be greatly, greatly appreciated. Recently just started a membership section on the channel. Don't always get to do all the suggested videos you guys suggest in the comment section below, but if you become a member, those suggested videos rise to the top, and I will do my best to get those done for you. Or if you'd like to become a member just to show love and to support the channel, man, that would be greatly, greatly appreciated as well. So with all that being said, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I'll definitely see you next time.